Basic instructions are basically cheat codes for life, yet millions of adults still prefer to play on extreme hard mode. Today, we have 50 times people looked at simple directions and chose absolute chaos instead. If one of these majestic failures genuinely surprises you, prove it by smashing that YouTube hype button. Consider it a tribute to everyone fighting daily battles against push doors. 1. You really have to admire the absolute blind loyalty it takes to physically argue with structural concrete. The robotic dashboard voice politely announced that the destination was rapidly approaching on the right. Rather than using his actual human eyes to notice the massive neon orange barriers and road-closed signs, this driver simply followed orders. He confidently cranked the steering wheel and drove his expensive luxury sedan directly into the incredibly wet, freshly poured foundation of a brand new office building. He basically became a permanent architectural feature just because a cheap navigation satellite told him to do it. 2. Corporate office break rooms are essentially ground zero for testing basic human decency, and somebody always fails the exam. Management pinned up a rather blunt printed note stating that your mother does not work there, so please wash your own filthy dishes. The very next morning, a crusty, dried-out coffee mug magically appeared in the stainless steel sink, but it came with a handwritten sticky note attached. The culprit politely explained that his mother was actually visiting from out of town next week and sincerely asked if the dirty cup could just wait until she arrived. The sheer audacity belongs in a national museum. 3. Nothing soothes an aching lower back quite like a warm electric heating pad, provided you actually read the giant warning label stitched directly into the fabric. The manufacturer practically begged users not to fall asleep while the device was switched on and generating heat. Naturally, one exhausted lady totally ignored this vital medical advice, cranked it up to the highest setting, and took a deep 4-hour nap. She woke up sporting a brand new agonizing first-degree burn in the exact rectangular shape of the pad. It was essentially a permanent flesh-toned tattoo, broadcasting her total inability to follow basic safety instructions. 4. To any rational adult with a functioning survival instinct, a bright yellow wet floor sign means you should probably tread carefully. To one terribly overconfident grocery shopper, it was clearly a formal invitation to compete in the retail Olympics. Spotting the freshly mopped linoleum, he took a full running start, hoping to achieve a majestic, friction-free slide down the entire beverage aisle. He managed about 3 feet of glorious gliding before his legs shot directly toward the ceiling. He landed hard, single-handedly body-slamming a towering pyramid of canned peaches, bruising his dignity significantly worse than the sticky fruit scattered everywhere. 5. Admitting sheer defeat to a tiny piece of molded plastic is a very bitter pill to swallow. One fully grown man found himself completely outmatched by a child-proof aspirin bottle that simply asked him to push down and turn the cap. Instead of swallowing his pride and asking his wife for help, he chose extreme mechanical violence. He marched straight out to his garage, locked the stubborn container inside a heavy industrial steel vise, and attacked it with pliers. The bottle surrendered by violently exploding under pressure, sending 300 tiny pain relievers bouncing endlessly across his filthy, oil-stained concrete floor. 6. Playing amateur barber in your own bathroom is a massive financial gamble, even when things go perfectly. The detailed paper manual for a fresh set of electric clippers explained exactly which plastic guards correspond to different hair lengths. Our brave protagonist decided he wanted a seriously close military cut for the summer, so he applied pure logic and used absolutely no guard at all. He just took the vibrating raw metal teeth directly to his scalp. He was genuinely horrified to discover a mangled, violently patchy, completely bald disaster staring back at him in the mirror, instead of a neat trim. 7. Corporate IT departments regularly deal with a level of absolute cluelessness that would easily break a normal person's spirit. A new hire was given a single crucial task, which was to back up his documents on the company's server before leaving for the weekend. His brilliant technological workaround was right-clicking his own personal desktop monitor, creating a new yellow folder, and manually typing the words, "The server," as the title. He proudly dragged his files there all week long. When his physical hard drive predictably died, he learned a devastating, career-altering lesson about what a network computer actually does. 8. Modern medicine tells us that daily vitamins are healthy, which naturally leads some brilliant people to believe that a massive handful will make them biologically immortal. The plastic bottle strictly ordered the user to take just one pill daily and sternly warned against exceeding the dose. Feeling a slight winter cold coming on, one guy decided to supercharge his immune system by swallowing the entire 30-day supply in a single chaotic gulp. Instead of gaining magical healing superpowers, his digestive tract hit the emergency panic button. He spent the next 24 hours locked in his bathroom questioning his own sanity. 9. Getting modern electronics to function usually requires pulling a tiny plastic tab so the fresh batteries can actually touch the metal contacts. One deeply frustrated grandmother spent 5 minutes searching for this clear strip before concluding the entire back panel was a massive manufacturing defect. Armed with a dull kitchen butter knife, she forcefully pried the plastic casing totally off, snapping the cheap retaining clips in the process. To fix her own unnecessary vandalism, she used thick duct tape to hold the batteries against the exposed circuit board. She then had the nerve to call customer service and complain about the cheap quality. 10. A perfectly manicured local park lawn surrounded by heavy wooden signs yelling at everyone to keep off the grass seems pretty self-explanatory. Yet, one local family looked at this strictly prohibited greenery and decided it was the absolute best premium real estate for a Sunday picnic. They laid down heavy blankets, unpacked smelly sandwiches, and comfortably settled in. When a furious, red-faced park ranger marched over to issue a severe citation, the father offered a bulletproof legal defense. He argued with a totally straight face that the sign only told them to keep off, and technically, their bodies were currently in a seated position. 11. Basic cosmetic instructions are often treated like a personal creative challenge rather than helpful scientific advice. A tiny glass bottle of premium nail polish gently suggested applying a second coat for the absolute best possible results. One highly dedicated customer processed this information and concluded that if 2 coats look decent, 8 consecutive coats must look absolutely spectacular. She layered on the thick paint until her fingers resembled colorful industrial cement. The gooey chemical mess completely refused to dry for 3 straight days and acted like a sticky magnet, collecting every single piece of loose pet hair within a 5-mile radius. 12. Patience is an incredibly rare virtue, especially when you are aggressively rubbing harsh, toxic chemicals directly into your own scalp. A boxed hair dye kit practically begged the user to perform a tiny patch test on their skin and wait 48 hours to check for allergic reactions. One woman looked at that printed warning, laughed out loud at the ridiculous concept of waiting 2 whole days, and scrubbed the entire bottle deep into her roots. Her dramatic emergency room visit later that evening, featuring a wildly swollen, dark purple face that resembled a bruised eggplant, proved that medical warnings actually exist for a reason. 13. Weekend home. Improvement projects are absolutely fantastic at exposing a confident amateur's total inability to read simple English. A proud homeowner spent his entire Saturday afternoon applying an expensive dark wood stain to his massive backyard deck. The metal paint can explicitly stated the chemical surface required a full 24 hours to completely dry. After roughly 3 hours and a very slight breeze, he touched it and declared it mostly dry. He proudly marched right across the wood, permanently stamping perfect, sticky white rubber sneaker prints into his beautiful masterpiece, effectively creating a permanent crime scene layout on his own patio. 14. Cooking a cheap bag of frozen vegetables in the microwave requires exactly 1 step of physical preparation, which is cutting a tiny slit to let the blistering steam safely escape. One very hungry woman viewed this instruction as an insulting waste of her valuable time and tossed the completely sealed plastic right onto the glass turntable. As the digital timer ticked down, the bag rapidly inflated into a rock-hard, incredibly tense green balloon. It eventually detonated with the concussive force of a small military grenade, permanently painting the entire interior of her expensive appliance with pulverized, boiling hot broccoli. 15. The glowing digital screen on the automatic teller machine clearly flashed the incredibly simple words asking the user to please take their card. But one highly distracted woman was way too busy intensely scrolling through her social media feed to pay any attention to the flashing warning lights. She blindly grabbed her freshly dispensed stack of $20 bills and just strolled away down the street. An hour later, she furiously called the local bank manager to report a major financial crime. She firmly believed that their malicious machine had purposely stolen her debit card the very second her back was turned. 16. Building a towering backyard playground for your kids should probably involve some basic engineering safety and common sense. A confident father was assembling a heavy metal swing set and flat out ignored the bold, printed text telling him to securely anchor the metal legs deep into the dirt. He proudly figured the sheer weight of the heavy steel was totally sufficient to hold the entire structure down. The very first time his youngest kid got some serious swinging momentum going, the entire massive frame lifted completely off the grass. It turned into a terrifying, high-stakes seesaw of pure parental negligence. 17. Fast food restaurant condiment stations are generally designed to be totally idiot-proof, but someone will always find a creative way to escalate a simple situation. A giant industrial ketchup dispenser had a polite little sticker asking hungry customers to press the pump gently. One guy, apparently furious that his salty French fries were getting cold, balled up his fist and hammer-punched the plastic button with the physical force of a professional boxer. The machine instantly retaliated with extreme prejudice, firing a high-pressure jet of thick red tomato paste straight up into the air and permanently ruining the acoustic ceiling tiles. 18. Pumping highly flammable liquid explosives directly into your vehicle comes with a few strict federal rules, like turning the actual engine completely off. A woman at a crowded gas station left her loud luxury SUV idling the entire time while she casually filled the heavy tank. When the terrified station attendant sprinted out to point out the extreme, totally unnecessary fire hazard, she dramatically rolled her eyes. Her brilliant defense was that she was only buying $10 worth of fuel, which was somehow not enough time for a catastrophic chemical explosion to occur. Because fire totally respects a tight budget. 19. Automated photo booths for official government documents give exactly one incredibly clear command, which is to keep a neutral expression and avoid smiling at all costs. One anxious guy stepped inside the tiny curtained box and somehow interpreted this basic instruction as a strict demand to look as inhumanly terrified as biologically possible. When the bright flash went off, he widened his eyes and let his jaw drop in a silent, completely horrified scream. The machine happily printed out a glossy photo of a man who looked like he had just witnessed a brutal murder, which the passport agency immediately rejected. 20. Heavy-duty workshop vacuums are incredibly powerful machines, but the thick manual specifically begs you not to use them for dangerous or hazardous materials. A totally oblivious homeowner decided this severe warning simply did not apply to his filthy, stone-cold living room fireplace. He jammed the plastic nozzle right into the deep brick hearth and turned the loud motor on maximum high. Instead of cleaning the mess, the machine instantly converted the fine ash into a massive, highly combustible cloud of pure gray misery. It violently blew straight out of the exhaust port, permanently coating his expensive sofa in a toxic layer of soot. 21. Changing a flat rubber tire on the side of a busy highway requires a very specific, logical order of mechanical operations. The thick car manual strictly tells you to loosen the heavy metal lug nuts before lifting the massive vehicle up into the air. One mechanical genius decided to jack his heavy sedan all the way up off the pavement first. He then attached the metal wrench and confidently threw his entire adult body weight directly onto it. Physics immediately took over, spinning the highly unstable 2-ton machine right off the tiny metal jack and crashing it violently onto the hard asphalt. 22. Pure academic desperation during college final exam week regularly leads to some truly questionable dietary choices. A totally sleep-deprived student bought a cheap glass jar of instant coffee, but completely failed to read the boring part about dissolving it in boiling hot water. Craving raw, unfiltered energy, he grabbed a massive metal tablespoon, scooped out a giant mountain of the intensely bitter brown granules, and shoved it directly into his dry mouth. His horrified roommate walked into the tiny kitchen 10 minutes later to find him gagging over the stainless steel sink, aggressively spitting out massive clouds of dry caffeinated dust. 23. Driving your dirty car into an automated industrial wash is normally a relaxing experience, assuming you actually read the bright neon sign demanding that you roll up your windows. One busy professional was so deeply engrossed in a loud speakerphone conversation that he just drove right onto the moving conveyor belt with his driver's side glass completely rolled down into the door. The heavy-duty industrial sprayers showed absolutely zero mercy. He bravely endured 3 agonizing minutes of high-pressure chemical soap, burning hot wax, and violent scrubbing brushes inside the cabin, eventually emerging on the other side totally drenched and coughing up suds. 24. Aerosol cooking spray was specifically invented to keep your expensive food from permanently welding itself to your metal cookware. The aluminum can literally says to spray a very light coating directly onto the surface of the hot pan before cooking. One aspiring morning chef read this and somehow decided the printed instruction meant he should generously spray the chemical lubricant directly onto his freshly cooked, fluffy pancakes right before eating them. He later complained to his confused family that the fancy breakfast tasted suspiciously metallic and left an absolutely revolting greasy chemical film stuck to the roof of his mouth. 25. The culinary process for preparing a cheap frozen microwave burrito is not exactly complex rocket science. The cardboard box gives 2 incredibly simple commands, which are to remove the clear plastic wrapper and microwave on high for exactly 90 seconds. One incredibly lazy bachelor decided that taking off the packaging was simply way too much manual labor for his tired hands. He tossed the fully sealed brick right into the machine and let the radiation do its magic. Afterward, he angrily logged online to leave a furious 1-star review, loudly complaining that his premium Mexican dinner tasted exactly like melted cellophane and deep regret. 26. Automated parking garage gates are brilliantly designed to process thousands of heavy cars efficiently, provided you actually follow the most basic visual directions. The machine featured a bright yellow sticker showing exactly how to insert the paper ticket with the printed arrow facing upwards. One stubborn driver spent 3 agonizing minutes jamming his wrinkled ticket in sideways, backward, and entirely upside down. After almost physically breaking the sensitive scanning slot with his brute force, he put his car in park, stormed over to the terrified booth attendant, and loudly declared that their highly advanced robotic system was totally broken. 27. Working at a crowded city zoo requires extreme attention to detail, especially when dangerous, hungry wildlife is involved. A senior keeper handed a heavy silver bucket full of raw fish to a brand new volunteer, giving one strict order to feed the cute penguins and absolutely avoid giving anything to the aggressive sea lions. She smiled, nodded confidently, walked straight over to the highly restricted sea lion enclosure, and dumped 20 pounds of raw seafood directly into the deep water. The resulting absolute chaos was a massive, incredibly loud, and violently slippery feeding frenzy that nearly dragged her into the pool. 28. Vending machines equipped with glowing digital signs demanding exact change only are making a very specific, totally non-negotiable financial demand. A thirsty woman completely ignored this bright warning and forcefully shoved a crumpled $5 bill right into the slot for a cheap chocolate bar. When the heavy machine inevitably swallowed her money and flatly refused to dispense $4 in shiny coins, she did not blame her own terrible reading comprehension. Instead, she grabbed the glass front and started shaking the massive appliance, fully convinced that this stationary snack dispenser had just robbed her in broad daylight. 29. Local pharmacists always try their absolute best to warn vulnerable patients about the highly unpleasant side effects of heavy prescription medication. A technician kindly told an older gentleman that his new pills might leave a slightly bitter chemical taste in his mouth. The man confidently returned exactly 1 week later, angrily demanding a full cash refund because the expensive medicine was totally ineffective. After a brief medical investigation, the confused staff realized the horrible truth. He had not been swallowing the pills with water, but rather slowly and diligently chewing the intensely bitter tablets like they were terrible peppermint candies. 30. Neighborhood pet sitters are strictly hired to keep small animals alive while you're on vacation, not to completely ruin their delicate digestive systems. A well-meaning lady noticed that the heavy 10-pound sack of premium dry cat food in the pantry was almost completely full. Trying to be incredibly proactive, she grabbed the entire bag and dumped every single piece of kibble onto the kitchen floor in a massive, crunchy mountain so the two tiny cats would not starve. The horrified owner returned from a relaxing weekend to find two incredibly bloated, completely immobile felines laying in a literal disaster zone. 31. Modern public transportation absolutely relies on a very simple, highly logical flow of human traffic to function properly. The city bus featured massive yellow letters painted directly above the back door, strictly instructing everyone to please exit from the rear. One particularly stubborn commuter somehow decided this simple rule completely violated his personal constitutional freedoms. Every single morning, he would physically shove his way upstream through a massive crowd of boarding passengers just to exit through the front windshield doors. His flawless logic was that since he paid at the front door, he literally owned the legal right to use it. 32. Prescription medical labels are always printed with incredibly precise, highly calculated language to prevent accidental poisoning. A little orange bottle clearly told the confused patient to take one single tablet by mouth twice daily. This guy showed up at his doctor's office a week later completely baffled by his total lack of physical recovery. He proudly explained that he had been taking a sharp kitchen knife, snapping every single tiny pill exactly in half, and eating one piece at sunrise and the other piece at sunset. He genuinely believed twice daily referred to the physical destruction of the actual pill. 33. Growing your own organic backyard vegetables sounds incredibly idyllic until you actually have to follow the highly specific instructions on the cheap packaging. A confident gardener named Brenda bought a pouch of premium tomato seeds that clearly stated she should carefully plant exactly 1 or 2 tiny seeds per hole. She somehow processed this simple English as a strict command to dump all 50 microscopic seeds right into a single, shallow crater in the dirt. Several weeks later, she went online to complain, posting a terrifying photo of a thick, violently mutated green monster stalk bursting from the garden soil. 34. Every single tiny box of cotton swabs sold in America features a highly desperate legal warning explicitly begging you not to shove them deep into your sensitive ear canal. For one determined guy, that tiny printed text was just a cowardly suggestion from a massive corporation that did not understand his personal hygiene needs. He pushed the plastic stick so deeply into his own skull that he eventually had to visit an emergency room, loudly complaining of sudden terrifying deafness. The exhausted doctor ended up extracting an entire, highly compacted cotton head that had become permanently lodged directly against his eardrum. 35. Aggressively arguing with the municipal city parking authority is always a completely losing battle, especially when your legal defense is totally absurd. A guy named Barry found a neon orange citation trapped under his windshield wiper and confidently took it straight to traffic court. The metal street sign clearly permitted 2 hours of free parking strictly between 9 in the morning and 6 in the evening. Because he had left his rusty sedan parked there for 3 straight nights, he passionately argued to the judge that the strict laws of the city simply took a relaxing break after the sun went down. 36. Upgrading to a highly advanced electric toothbrush requires a tiny bit of initial patience that some modern consumers simply do not possess. The heavy paper manual for this expensive dental tool clearly demanded a full 24-hour charge directly on the base before the very first use. One impatient woman plugged the plastic base into the bathroom wall for a grand total of 15 minutes, ripped the brush off, and furiously scrubbed her teeth until the tiny motor pathetically died. She then brazenly marched right back to the customer service desk, loudly proclaiming that the internal battery was entirely defective garbage. 37. Setting up a highly modern flat-screen television basically makes you a temporary network engineer in your own living room. The bright blue start screen on a brand new smart TV offered one incredibly simple instruction, which was to connect to a local Wi-Fi network to access all the built-in streaming applications. One incredibly stubborn guy aggressively smashed the skip button on his tiny remote, completely bypassing the internet setup entirely. He then proudly spent his entire Sunday afternoon loudly screaming at his local cable provider on the phone, furiously demanding to know why they physically forgot to install the Netflix channel. 38. Providing remote technical computer support is an absolute psychological nightmare because you have to rely on the actual user to help you solve the problem. An exhausted IT professional politely emailed a woman named Brenda, asking her to simply take a quick screenshot of the confusing digital error message popping up on her display. Brenda responded by pulling out her personal smartphone, stepping way back, and snapping a horribly blurry tilted photograph of her entire dusty physical monitor. She actually attached the grainy disaster to an email with a sincere apology, stating that the terrible overhead office lighting completely ruined the picture quality. 39. Proving that you are an actual biological human being on the internet has become surprisingly difficult for actual human beings. A standard website security test politely asked a guy to click on every single tiny square containing a bicycle. He intensely stared at a grid that clearly featured a lone bicycle wheel leaning against a heavy brick wall, applied his strictest personal visual logic, and totally refused to select it because it completely lacked a metal frame. After aggressively failing the automated security checkpoint 5 consecutive times, he furiously emailed the webmaster to complain that the artificial intelligence was being ridiculously unfair. 40. Sticking an extremely legible no soliciting sign directly at eye level on your front porch seems like an impenetrable magical shield against annoying traveling salespeople. Unfortunately, one highly aggressive guy entirely ignored the stark warning and smashed the doorbell anyway. When the incredibly annoyed homeowner ripped open the door and silently pointed an angry finger right at the metal sign, the guy flashed a blinding $1 million smile. He confidently explained that he was absolutely not soliciting anything at all. He was just simply trying to sell them a brand new, highly expensive vacuum cleaner. The heavy wooden door was immediately slammed shut. 41. Famous internet cooking recipes are incredibly precise with their measurements, but they cannot possibly protect you from your own staggering culinary ignorance. A popular food blog posted a fantastic homemade chili recipe that specifically called for exactly one single minced clove of fresh garlic to add a very subtle kick. One angry home chef decided to leave an absolutely brutal 1-star review after her family dinner was totally ruined. It turns out, she severely misunderstood basic botanical plant anatomy and chopped up an entire pungent head of raw garlic. She typed that the meat sludge made her crying children physically leave the house. 42. Dealing with confusing city parking infrastructure requires a very basic, fundamental understanding of simple mathematics and local currency. A highly stressed driver pulled up to a rusty electronic meter that clearly stated a 25-cent coin would purchase exactly 15 minutes of legal parking time. He aggressively shoved a crisp, completely flat $1 bill directly into the tiny payment slot, fully expecting the tiny digital screen to grant him a luxurious 60 minutes. When the display only registered his first quarter and stubbornly showed 15 minutes, he completely lost his mind, loudly screaming at a stationary metal pole about massive government theft. 43. Basic skincare routines apparently require a master's degree in reading comprehension. A thick, industrial-strength charcoal face mask came with a massive warning to apply a very thin layer and strictly avoid all facial hair. One highly confident guy ignored this completely, violently smearing half the heavy black tube across his entire face, directly over his thick eyebrows and manicured beard. 2 hours later, the dark chemical cement had fully cured to his skin like architectural concrete. He spent his Sunday screaming in the bathroom, forcefully waxing his own face bald just to escape his terrible cosmetic decisions. 44. Pressurized metal cans of sweet dessert toppings are amazing pieces of modern food science, provided you actually read the bold text printed on the side. The big black letters aggressively tell you to shake the can violently before pressing the tiny plastic nozzle to properly mix the compressed gas and the heavy dairy. One stressed birthday party host was rushing to serve dessert and totally skipped the crucial shaking process. He aimed the nozzle directly at a beautiful chocolate cake and unleashed a terribly sad, watery spurt of pure chemical propellant, completely crushing the absolute hopes of 8 sugar-craving toddlers. 45. Do-it-yourself interior decorating usually ends in massive, highly expensive structural property damage when basic printed instructions are misinterpreted by amateurs. A highly confident guy wanted to hang an incredibly heavy antique glass mirror in his living room and read an online article demanding that he absolutely locate a hidden wooden wall stud for deep structural support. His brilliant execution of this professional advice was to just walk right up to the drywall, knock on it with his knuckles twice, and drill a massive hole wherever the sound vaguely pleased his ears. 10 minutes later, the massive glass pane violently ripped a gigantic chunk of plaster down. 46. Remote tech support workers easily possess the absolute best stories about the darkest, most terrifying depths of modern consumer stupidity. A tired representative for a major computer company received a wildly aggressive email from a furious customer claiming their brand new wireless keyboard was a total financial fraud because it simply would not connect. To vigorously prove his flawless point, the angry guy actually attached a high-resolution photograph of the plastic keyboard sitting dead on his messy desk. The funniest part is that sitting peacefully in the deep background of the image was the original cardboard box, with the required tiny USB connection dongle still completely wrapped in plastic. 47. Those incredibly springy, highly reflective silver car sunshades are legally notorious for being practically impossible to properly fold back up into a neat circle. A frustrated driver spent 5 agonizing minutes in a boiling hot asphalt parking lot, desperately trying to twist the heavy metal rings into a tiny shape as specifically instructed by the attached fabric tag. Completely defeated and sweating profusely, he simply crushed the entire thing into a horrible, highly chaotic wad and shoved it deep into the back seat. About 3 miles down the fast highway, the incredible physical tension finally snapped, and the massive silver disc violently exploded open. 48. Local municipal beach ordinances exist strictly to keep innocent walking pedestrians from getting run over, but amateur neighborhood lawyers absolutely love to test the legal boundaries. A massive wooden sign permanently bolted at the entrance of a popular ocean boardwalk strictly banned the dangerous riding of heavy bicycles and fast skateboards. A highly confident local guy was eventually pulled over by an exhausted beach cop while casually pedaling an actual circus unicycle right through the incredibly dense tourist crowd. He stood there completely offended, passionately arguing that the printed text totally failed to specifically mention single-wheeled entertainment vehicles. 49. Basic ocular hygiene is absolutely not a place where you ever want to cut financial corners and get highly creative with your own bodily fluids. A deeply resourceful woman named Linda suddenly realized she had completely run out of her expensive, highly sterile contact lens solution late one night. Her absolutely unhinged, deeply cost-saving alternative was to just heavily lick her plastic lenses like a postage stamp and pop them right back into her sensitive eyeballs. The resulting severe bacterial infection was so aggressively disgusting that her horrified optometrist permanently kept extreme close-up photos of her ruined corneas to actively terrify his other extremely lazy patients. 50. Keeping a resilient, incredibly small desert houseplant completely alive is the absolute lowest possible bar for proving you can care for a living thing. A deeply offended woman marched right up to a local garden center cash register, holding a small ceramic pot filled entirely with brown, liquefied, absolutely rotten plant mush, loudly demanding a full cash refund. When the completely confused teenage clerk asked about her strict daily care routine, she proudly puffed out her chest and declared she generously gave the desert plant a giant cup of tap water every single morning, completely ignoring the giant tag begging for dry soil. So, which of these 50 disasters made you realize you're actually doing okay in life? Drop the absolute dumbest thing you've seen someone do with simple instructions in the comments. I know you're hiding a good story. Subscribe so I can keep making you feel like a genius. And if you haven't yet, use one of your 3 weekly hype buttons on this video. Save the other 2 for cat videos.